Hello, I'm Jared Fry, General Manager of Medina TV, and I want to welcome you to this program where we're going to discuss the City of Medina's EMS Levy Renewal and increase, and hopefully provide you some information to get you more well-informed as you head to the ballots this November. And joining me to provide some of that information, we have Keith Durham, Finance Director of the City of Medina, and we also have Mark Phillips, the Director of Medina Life Support Team. Welcome to both of you guys, and look forward to hearing what you have to tell us here about this upcoming levy and renewal. So I guess, Keith, we could start with you if you want to kind of discuss what the current levy is really all about.
Thank you, Jared. The current levy is how Medina supports its share of the life support team. It's through a property tax. It originally passed as a 2.2 mil levy back in 1999. Collections on the current levy began in 2001. It's been renewed every 5 years. The last time it was renewed, it had over 75% of the vote in 2014. But in Ohio, governments do not receive inflationary increases on property tax revenue. So we're essentially still collecting $1999, and that's why we're going to be asking for an increase this fall. And
I guess to clarify that for the residents a little more, if their property value has risen, the taxes don't follow that, is what you're saying there with that last
statement. That's right. The auditor's office reduces the millage to compensate for that.
Yeah, so it always collects at the same dollar value on a yearly basis.
Correct.
Okay, I want to make sure I clarified that for everyone. And then also, I guess as we look through, kind of what is the status right now of our EMS fund?
Well, from original passage of the current levy in '99 through approximately the end of 2011, we ran a surplus in that fund, and those surpluses were saved up so that by the end of 2011 we had a balance of about $2.2 million. But since then we've been running at a deficit, and that balance has been depleted by more than $1 million. So we're going to have to pass an increase because we don't have enough money left to get through the next 5 years on the 5-year levy. We're currently running a deficit of about $15,000 to $20,000 a month.
And that's something that's been steadily decreasing over time. And I think we kind of have a graph that kind of helps point that out for you a little bit.
We do. There's our surplus. You see on the left is the surplus, and then on the right it crosses over to a deficit. We've been running deficits in this fund the last few years.
And I think we'll touch on some of the reasons why that is as we go along here a little bit.
We will.
And then I guess, Mark, why don't you first tell us a little bit about the Medina Life Support Team?
Life Support Team provides 24 hours, 7 days a week emergency medical service to not only the city of Medina, but Montville and Medina townships. It's a joint effort between the three communities and Medina Hospital, Cleveland Clinic. And we're proud to have been around since 1976. And medics respond on thousands of calls a year, and we're credited with saving quite a few lives every year.
And I think as people don't know that you guys are stationed over by the Medina Hospital, just I guess if you're facing the hospital off to the left side, correct?
Yes, yeah. Yes. Our main office is at Medina Hospital, but we also station paramedics at Medina Fire Station #1 on Reagan Parkway, and out at Montville Public Safety Center.
And I think as I was saying here that you, if you average that out just in the last year, 2018, that you basically average about one call every 2 hours that you guys are responding to something?
That's one way to put it. About 4,500 calls we responded to in 2018.
And a wide variety of calls that you guys respond to. And
yes, about everything you could imagine as far as a medical emergency, accidents, falls. We have a large elderly population that often needs assistance. Medics are called out sometimes just to maybe assist them, lift them off the floor if they're not injured. It's a valuable service to the community.
Oh, absolutely. And then life-saving in some instances, for sure.
And with those, they get a paramedic assessment as well. So it may be that they don't feel injured, but the medics assess they may have a medical issue that ultimately results in being transported to the hospital.
Sure. Or gives them a heads up to actually go see a physician and then follow up to prevent something bigger from happening as well. Yes. And I guess, Keith, along those lines, and hearing the great work they do, and part of that, you mentioned the revenues or the spending has been increasing in that fund. Kind of break down the revenue and expenditure side of that for us.
Well, revenues are a little bit down from what they were a few years ago, and mostly that's because the state phased out the personal property tax. So property tax levies used to be real property and personal property. Now they're just real property, so we lost a little bit of revenue there. And expenditures are not up substantially, but there's inflation every year. You know, ambulances get more expensive, and we're going to talk about some of those expenditures and things that get more expensive, and just general inflation, fuel and everything else, it gets more expensive year to year. So our costs are up a little bit, our revenues are down a little bit, and that's why we're here asking for a renewal and an increase.
Yeah, and then we'll touch on that too. And I think we have another graph there a little bit. You can kind of break down for us.
This is the revenues that we bring in, the city brings in total in the EMS fund. From 2008 to 2010, it averaged $1,219,000, and then from 11 through 18, we were down to $1,075,000. So you see that drop, and that's a pretty significant hit for us. Major reason, as I mentioned, is the state's phase out of personal property tax, and over the 8 years from 11 through 18. Our revenue was $1.1 million less than it would have been if it had just continued at what it previously averaged.
So just because of the changes on the state level, you see the decrease of almost $1.1 million in the revenue that was brought in. And that basically, I guess part of the reason for that, and we kind of touched on it a little bit earlier, and Mark, you can kind of fill that in, is basically just the cost of equipment and things of that nature are just on the rise.
Yes, as was mentioned, an ambulance 20 years ago was, $87,000. Now it's $187,000. Our most recent purchase, and that includes no equipment. That is just the vehicle itself. Technology, as it's changed over the years, it's a double-edged sword. Some of it it's life-saving, but there's a cost involved with it. So we carry all the latest technology in terms of cardiac monitoring, CPR devices. Like everyone else, we have computers now to do our charting, software, things like that, new radio system. All of those contribute to the additional costs.
And I think as you touch on those, a lot of those are very valuable when responding to calls, what these vehicles are capable of doing and helping with the care of someone. And I think that kind of leads us into our next slide here. We can kind of talk about just how some of these cardiac monitors and everything work within the vehicle, because you talked about the outside of the vehicle, but now the inside of the vehicle has a lot of value.
Correct. Our life packs, that's our cardiac monitoring, allow us the capability to transmit a patient's 12-lead EKG directly from the scene. Could be in their home, could be on the side of the road. Those EKGs are not only sent to Medina Hospital, but when appropriate, we send those to the main campus at Cleveland Clinic. If it's a serious cardiac event, that triggers what we call an auto launch, which a critical care team is sent either by helicopter or ground to meet the medics and the patient at Medina Hospital. And that transfer of care to a higher level of care, such as the main campus of Cleveland Clinic or another facility, allows that patient to be treated in a very timely manner when heart muscle is literally dying by the minute. So that literally saves their lives.
And very much expedites the process. You don't have to wait in the old days where you actually arrived and kind of reassess or have the equipment to do what was needed there because it wasn't in the vehicle. But now having it in the vehicle, it's an excellent resource. And I think, Keith, you can kind of speak firsthand to that yourself.
I can. I'm a resident too, and my parents are, and my dad had a heart attack a few years ago, and it's really amazing. When LST showed up where he was, right away that EKG read was to the hospital in downtown, and so they have doctors looking at that where he hasn't even left the building where he had a heart attack yet, and that's like Mark said, that means faster treatment, faster decisions on where he needs to go and what needs to be done. And for all of us who live here in Medina, that's important, because when it's your turn or someone in your family's turn, you want that to be as fast and as good as it can possibly be.
Absolutely. And it's something nice to know for residents to have that security of knowing if that does happen, that we have the equipment to give the best care possible to that family member or yourself if the situation arises. And I think that's part of the reason you guys have had some good quality ratings in terms of that.
Yes. Every year we get the American Heart Award for our cardiac care. We're up to the Gold Plus standard now. All of that relates to what I mentioned earlier, how fast we assess these patients and get them transported to the proper facility for emergency care.
Now, I think too, you guys also talk about controlling costs. Why don't you touch a little bit on some of the controlling costs involved with LST?
Now, a perfect example is our Striker power load system. It's something that wasn't around 20 years ago. We're proud to have those in all our ambulances. It's a rather costly piece of equipment. However, the state of Ohio Bureau of Workers' Comp provides grant monies for that equipment, which covers about 80%. The big feature of it, though, it frees up the medics from lifting large patients in and out of the back of the ambulance. It literally is, as it says, it's a power load system. And you can see in the picture, it slides in and out of the ambulance and saves a lot of back injuries and pulled muscles. And it's also safer for the patients as well.
Right, and I mean, whether it's, like you said, whether it's a larger patient or issues because of the way the roadway is or the icy, if it's snow or ice conditions, it just helps provide that factor of safety and allows you to have a workforce that's not out or injured at the time and able to respond to every call.
Very important to us. Being a paramedic is a very physical profession. Sometimes you don't think of it as such, but a lot of times we're climbing up and down stairs, over embankments for car accidents, lots of physical activity in moving patients.
Absolutely. And then, so I guess with all those costs and everything that we just talked about with Mark, Keith, how's that kind of reflect for the levy fund and expenditures that you look at?
Well, that does come right to the bottom line. I mean, our expenditures are up, and like we said, we're still collecting $1999. And the issue is that in 1999, like we mentioned a little bit ago, an ambulance was $87,500, and now an ambulance is $187,000, and that doesn't even get into all the equipment that's in the ambulance, which has all gone up as well. So those costs are up, as you can see on the slide. And in addition to the cost of those kind of things, Mark mentioned a little bit ago they responded to 4,500 calls approximately in 2018. Back in '99, it was 3,700. So they're responding to more calls with more expensive ambulances and so on, and that costs money.
Yeah, and then one of the things that I guess because it costs money, because you actually kind of lose money, is the property tax rollback. Why don't you talk a little bit about that to kind of get our residents informed?
The reason specifically that we're asking for a renewal and increase is that back in 2013, the state of Ohio decided to phase out what was called the homestead exemption and rollback. And those things are reductions in property tax where the state pays part of the property tax. They're not doing that on new levies, but they are doing it on renewals. They're continuing to do it on renewals of old levies. So the renewal portion of this levy, we're doing that to maintain that so we don't lose it. And then the increase is separate so that we can have funds sufficient to operate the LST.
And I think that's as the voters look at it, sometimes people cringe when they see the word increase, but the reason you're doing the renewal and the increase is actually to save the taxpayers' dollars.
To save the taxpayers' dollars, we contacted the county auditor's office because they deal with property tax all the time, and they recommended this was the way to go about it. County Auditor Mike Kovac said it's very smart for the City of Medina to ask for a renewal and increase instead of a new levy. This approach will save Medina City taxpayers approximately 10% on the new levy, as the renewal portion will be subsidized by the state. So that's why we're doing that.
And there's the quote that you had from him as well, and it's a good financial way. So that's why I think the biggest key is making sure residents don't panic when they see it's a renewal and the increase. We're actually trying to do it in the best interest of saving them the money.
That's the best way to do it and save taxpayers that reimbursement from the state is doing a renewal and increase.
Now, and I think you said you were in the process of determining the exact increase that needs to be applied to the renewal. Is that still something being worked on?
Well, we're going to ask council for a 1 mil increase, so it'll be a renewal and a 1 mil increase, and that will be sufficient to cover our costs for the next 5 to 10 years because it's a 5-year renewal. So we have to plan ahead because this levy will go for 5 years, and the 5 years don't start until 2021. So we're going to continue collecting on the old levy only and continue to lose money and spend down that balance for all of 2019, all of 20 before we get into 2021, and then it'll be a 5-year term. So we have to plan ahead so that we can get through 21, 26 and beyond.
And a lot of that, it helps out not only the City of Medina, but as Mark mentioned earlier, it's a great partnership that you guys have. I don't know if you want to touch on that a little bit in terms of the...
Yes, it is a great partnership. a lot of communities wouldn't be able to do what we do without having the relationship with the other communities. I'll mention too, our first responders are second to none. Our police departments in all 3 communities. Medina Fire Department assists us daily, and the teamwork is what allows us to provide the excellent service that we do.
And I think that's the most important thing. You're talking about a human life in whatever circumstance it is. And as you mentioned, have those first responders. I know the City of Medina has done a good job of training the officers to help kind of triage until LST can arrive. Certain situations, having different devices on hand to assist in that medical care. And then, of course, once you guys arrive, having the technology on board to be able to assess that patient even further, to get them the best treatment as quickly as possible, to most definitely save lives in situations.
Yes, there's a lot going on behind the scenes, and everything from the 911 dispatchers all the way to the patient arrival at the hospital involves many people, many agencies to have a successful outcome for the patient. And we're proud to be able to have that service.
And in order to provide that service, you have to be able to cover the cost of the equipment that's involved, and hence why you're Keith, and you've looked at this and tried to assess the best situation possible for our residents, and this renewal with the increase has come out to be the best option.
That's correct. It'll preserve the exemption like we talked about and provide the funding that we need to continue having this quality of service for our residents.
And as you mentioned, it'll be 5 years, so actually not starting until 2021. This would cover them for about the next 7 years as we look at this.
That's correct.
Now, is there anything that, as we go through this, that we may not have touched on that you guys want to make sure we brought up in this conversation?
I think we've covered it.
Yeah, so now the next steps, as we mentioned, we're just waiting to hear from City Council and determining whether...
There's a process under state law for a property tax levy. The council will pass a resolution requesting that the county auditor certify an estimate of the amount that the levy will bring in. Then we'll get that back from the county auditor. Then the council will have to pass a resolution of necessity to put it on the ballot and submit that to the Board of Elections, and then it'll be on the election in November.
Resolution 6519, a resolution declaring it necessary to levy a renewal of an existing 2.2 mills with an increase of 1 mill in excess of the 10 mill limitation for the operation of an ambulance and emergency medical service.
Move to approve. Second.
Discussion. Mr. Durham.
Thank you, Mr. President. As you know, we've discussed this a number of times, actually for a number of years, because we've known that we were going to need an increase at some point. The EMS Fund is collecting the same levy that has been collected for 20 years since it was originally passed. As you know, we do not get increases on property taxes. We don't get inflationary increases like we do with income tax. So that amount that's collected now is actually less than it was a number of years ago because of the rollback of the personal property tax. Consequently, we need more money to operate the EMS, and we're going to ask the voters for a renewal and increase. The reason we've structured this in this way is by doing the renewal, we maintain a reimbursement that the state is phasing out on new tax levies. So we're saving the taxpayers money by keeping that on the renewal portion, but then we need an increase in addition to that. Thank you.
Thank you. And I believe it's going to start airing on cable TV.
Yes, we did a video presentation explaining the need for it, explaining what the money's used for, and that'll be on cable TV in the future.
Any further discussion? Mr. Starcher?
Mr. President, thank you. Once again, I'd just like to encourage residents to vote for this levy. The LST Life Support Team does such a fantastic job for this city and the surrounding townships that I think it's money well worth spent and worth every penny. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional comments? Will the clerk please call the roll on the adoption of the resolution?
Rose.
Yes.
Shields.
Yes.
Simpson. Yes. Starcher.
Yes.
Coin.
Yes.
Heffinger.
Yes.
Lamb.
Yes.
Resolution 65-19 passes 7-0.
And that's the intent that voters, when they go out this November to vote, and there'll be a lot on the ballot this November with a lot of local races that they can go out and do their part. And also feel free to take advantage of the absentee ballots as well to be able to vote for this levy.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I appreciate your guys' time, and I'm sure we'll be talking more between now and November. So thanks a lot for your time and providing this information for our residents.
Thank you, Jerry.
Thank you.
Thank you.